Back to the Saintmaker podcast. This is episode 2. So last week we looked at how to create a list of yearly goals based on kind of a discernment process that I laid out. And then we also prioritize them. This week I want to get into how to actually take those top seasonal goals that you picked out last week and turn them into practical goal plans. So the overall goal of this series is essentially to create kind of a life plan, something to work from, that's suited to your vocation, that helps you make the most of the time that God gives you, that motivates you and inspires you to do great things, and that you can fall back on when things get tough or overwhelming. So, between this episode and last week's episode, I think we're starting to really establish a good foundation for how to frame that life plan. And then, if you're using the Saintmaker, this is how the Saintmaker is structured. Everything up front is kind of goal setting, and then it trickles down from there. So we start with kind of seasonal goal setting, and then it moves to establishing monthly plans, which involves, figuring out how you're going to address your goals. And then it also then goes to weekly, and now it allows us to create plans on a daily basis. So, we're starting with the big picture and kind of like working down to like the micro stuff, which ends up being the daily stuff. But anyways, thanks for being here. And right now we're streaming across YouTube, Facebook, and also our private Facebook group for Saintmaker customers. So hi to everyone. We're always thinking of you and praying for you, and we wish you the best. We established, just a real quick note about this podcast. So as we move forward, I'm going to be looking more and more at interviewing different Catholic influencers, people who are out there, speakers, authors, things like that, podcasters, and we will also be interviewing a lot of priests. I have a few priests in mind that are coming up. It looks like maybe next week we're going to have a priest on who's a Saintmaker user, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this. But in general, and of course we're going to have episodes like this where I'm going to share kind of practical information. The overall view of this podcast is to present practical information for how you can actually work on a day-to-day basis on being a saint. Right. So one of the things that I notice is that there are very few resources out there for people who want to know, not just in an abstract way, but really in a day-to-day way, like, in our vocations, through our work, through our relationships, how do we become and be saints? Right. So that's what this podcast, I hope, helps to provide to some extent. I realize it's a big mission. A lot of it has to do with many things that we're doing around the Saintmaker, but I do think the podcast is going to be one of our main tools in kind of conveying that. So if you do want to help us kind of spread the word about this, you can like this video, you can share it with friends, you can leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to be monitoring the comment stream throughout this live stream. And if you do have any comments or questions, you can leave it in the comments, and towards the end, I'll see about making some time to answer some of those. So also I wanted to say before we get into this, last week we did the first episode in this series, and then, so I recommend going back and listening to that. You can listen to this, but then, I'm going to lay out some very practical stuff. So maybe before you start really kind of like implementing the practical takeaways and working through this, I would suggest going back and working through episode 1 and listening to that and making sure you really have a good grasp on it. The other thing is, I recently posted a blog post called Why Christians Set and Achieve Goals Differently. So you can check that out at thesaintmaker.com/blog. And that's an important one because it lays out sort of the mindset, the Catholic Christian mindset of how to approach goal setting. And it really comes at it strongly from a biblical perspective. So I think you'll enjoy that. So I would recommend checking that out as well. The final thing I'm going to say is our at thesaintmaker.com, our Memorial Day sale is right now happening. So that's 30% off all of our products. That's the summer planner. That's our new Daily Saint 5-minute spiritual journal, which I'm very excited about. We now have bundles which include stickers and the Saintmaker itself, along with a new product also, which is our pocket notebooks. So anyways, I don't want to go too far into that, but we do have a good sale going on. And so if you want to check it out, saintmaker.com. All right, so once more for anybody who's joined, basically in this episode we're going to follow up on our last episode, which was about kind of laying out a discernment process for yearly goals. And this episode we're going to get into actually setting those goals with practical goal plans. So, all right, let's get into it. So I wanted to start off first by talking a little bit about St. Thomas Aquinas' understanding of the intellect and the will. So the intellect is used to kind of discern the higher things. Animals don't have an intellect, humans do, so we can kind of use it to perceive things about our relationship to the world and our relationship to God that help us formulate our action in the world and our approach to things. And really, our intellect informs our will, and now we act through our will in the world, right? So when it comes to goal setting, like last week, we really focused on engaging our intellect to kind of discern the higher truths about our life plan, about our vocation, and about sort of our station in life and what's presented to us. And then we worked a little bit on kind of aligning that with our understanding, our current understanding of God's will for us. So that's all very intellectual stuff. This week we're going to be focusing more on equipping our will with the ability and the practical means to pursue the good, the true, and the beautiful, which we're doing everything we can through living a sacramental life and through good discernment to align our efforts and align our goals with the good, the true, and the beautiful, and ultimately the highest good, which is God and our purpose in life, which is to know, love, and serve God, of course, and to be saints. So, once our will is kind of equipped with a good understanding of what our goals are and how we're going to achieve them, we now have what we need to pursue them, and to pursue them even in the face of difficulty, right? So that's what this episode is about. And St. Thomas Aquinas would, I hope, approve of this approach. All right, so before we go too far into it, I want to, for people who aren't using a Saintmaker, if you do have a Saintmaker, grab your Saintmaker and turn to the goal plan page. And if you don't have a Saintmaker, I'm going to teach you how to set up a page really quick. So pull out a blank piece of paper. Leave a little room at the top because you're going to write the name of your goal up at the top. And then I want you to write 4 headings with space under each of those 4 headings. So the first heading will be goal summary, and that goal summary will be a detailed summary of your goal. The next heading will be motivations, and that's going to be more what motivates you about your goal. So that's really, really starting to engage the will and to help you kind of discern a motivating path forward, right? So next heading will be milestones. Milestones break the goal down into achievable chunks. And then finally, we're going to have our task list. So our task list will then take our milestones and break the milestones down into to-do lists. So under your task list heading, I want you to write 3 separate subheadings. So, and then with space under each of those. So top one will be based on milestone 1, middle one will be based on milestone 2, and then next one will be based on milestone 3. So under task list, you have a heading task list, and then you have those 3 subheadings. Okay, so again, if you have your Saintmaker, all this stuff is already there. I'm actually going to pull up the goal page here. So this is what it looks like in the Saintmaker. Again, you have your name at the top, your goal title at the top. You have your goal summary here. You have your motivations, milestones, and task list. So that's essentially how you want to imitate that format if you're just using blank paper. All right. So let's get into the goal summary. Well, first, the first step is to write the name of your goal at the top, as you can see here. So just in my example, I'm going to give you an example, and we'll work through that example, and hopefully that'll be somewhat helpful in terms of, you being able to transfer that to setting your own goals. But my example is car. So I want to purchase a car, let's say. So in my example, I would write buy a car up at the top. That's the goal name. And next we're going to get into goal summary. So when writing your goal summary, it's important to use what's called SMART goal setting. So SMART is an acronym, SMART, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. So let's get into that briefly. Specific means that your goal should be clear and specific. Essentially, if it's not clear and specific, you're not going to be able to really truly focus your efforts, and it's going to become very overwhelming very fast. But this is a way of really intellectually kind of grasping and grappling with the specificity of the goal, so you're not just kind of out in no man's land trying to figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing. Next, the M stands for measurable. So measurable could mean quantities. It could mean very specific progress goals. So the question that I think is best to ask here as kind of a subset of what it is to create a measurable goal is you can ask, how will I know when this goal is accomplished, right? So, and that should be specific. This will have changed. I will have accomplished this. I will have this much of this thing, etc. So again, very specific, very measurable. It'll allow you to track progress and, again, stay motivated. So the next letter in the acronym is A, so actionable. So actionable means, especially from a Catholic perspective, it should fit very well into your vocation. It should be suited to your station in life and to your stage of life. And it should also be a good complement to other goals. The final thing is you should have access to the resources to complete it. So this means that you can actually act on it, right? So that's how we kind of set an actionable goal. Finally, actually there's two more. So the next is it should be realistic. So I suggest you set a realistic goal that's achievable and also that stretches you a little bit in a way that, a kind of stretch that's a little bit exciting, a little bit slightly intimidating, but also motivating because of that. And then finally, it should be timely. So every goal needs a target date. Not only do you have an overall target date, but we're actually going to get into target dates for the milestones as well. So at this stage, you're more focusing on the overall target date. And so now you have a deadline to focus on and work towards. So that's how to set a SMART goal. Your goal summary essentially should be a summary of your SMART goal, right? So I'll give you an example. It's a succinct statement. It's going to include all the information that you establish when you're working on setting that SMART goal. So for the car example, I might have 3 bullet points in my goal summary here. Bullet point 1 would be research and buy a mid-size SUV for under $30,000, right? So that would be, again, a very specific description of what I'm looking for, and then it would be a specific price. And then the next would be buy, use, and plan to sell within 3 to 5 years. So this is kind of getting into an understanding of more of the specificity of the goal. Again, there's some measurability there. And then finally close by the end of June. So that's the overall target, right? All right, so in the Saintmaker, once you have your goal summary written, you now have several different areas of life that your goal is going to impact, right? So you could just check off the areas of life that you think this is going to have a positive impact on, all right? Oh, hi, Mark. Yeah, I see your comment there. We'll address that at the end, but thanks for chiming in. Again, anybody who's watching, if you like this, go ahead and share it, like the video, comment. We'd love to hear from you. And then I'm going to field some comments at the end. So, all right. So we've set our area of life. We have our goal summary, all good. Now we're moving into motivations. So again, motivations is a really strong way of engaging our will. right? So now we're going to write the top 3 reasons that we're motivated to complete the goal. So motivations also orient us towards what is good about the goal, because, we're looking for specific outcomes in life that are presumably good. I mean, if we're attracted to those things, and especially if we're living a good Catholic life, we're really orienting ourselves again to be focused on good things, right? So these motivations they're pointing towards the good things that we're really shooting for and that we're hoping to accomplish in a bigger way, in the bigger context of our life. So in the car example, I can we'll do three motivations. So just as an example, I want my wife to have a reliable car for local travel and errands. So that would be a good motivating reason. Next, the kids need a comfortable option for travel. And then finally, this is going to be a good car for road trips with the family. So these are all good, specific motivations for accomplishing this. Next, you want to move on to milestones, which we have here in the Saintmaker. So under milestones, essentially you're looking at it still from a bigger perspective. Remember, we're kind of working down from big picture to middle picture to small picture, right? So the goal setting structure, or the goal plan structure is the same. So for milestones, on an upper level here, what are the main things that need to be accomplished? All right. So in the car example, again, not without getting into too much detail with to-dos. So, because milestones are broken into to-dos, and we'll do that in the next step with the task list. So, under the car example, 3 milestones might be research best options under $30,000. The next milestone might be research financing options, and then the final milestone might be test drive, purchase, and celebrate. And I do recommend finding a way to celebrate when you meet your goal, because that's just another way of kind of engaging your will, right, to really be working on a consistent basis to accomplish it. So it's a little bit of a trick you can throw in there, a little bit of a carrot, right? So then, as we have in the Saintmaker here, you can write a milestone due date for each of the milestones. And I would recommend that, because again, this is just another way of making it measurable, timely, etc. All right, now we'll talk task list. So under task list, we want to list the actions that will allow us to hit our milestones and achieve our goal. So for milestone 1, if you're working from a blank piece of paper, you will have written task list, and you will have had 3 subheadings, just like we have here, with some space underneath them. So let's work through this. So for milestone 1, again in my car example, I would write, create a list of favorite brands and models under $30,000. Next task under milestone 1 would be compare options online and arrange test drives. The next task would be narrow down to top 1 to 3 models. And now we can move to milestone 2. So I'll just kind of burn through this. So milestone 2, I might write call banks for financing, get pre-approval on one option, and then print paperwork. Once I have kind of all the, say I have all my pre-approval paperwork, I want to take it into the dealer. I want to make sure that I have whatever paperwork I need. So that's the print paperwork step. And then finally, under milestone 3, we're going to repeat the process. For my milestone, what was my third milestone was test drive, purchase, and celebrate. So the steps there would be make a decision with the wife based on the research, collect all the paperwork and go to the dealer to actually purchase. And then the final step, like I mentioned, might be a form of celebration for having accomplished it. So take a weekend road trip to the lake. So now we've accomplished everything that the Saintmaker lays out in terms of goal planning. And if you've got your blank piece of paper, you've filled it out just like we would have filled it out in the planner. The nice thing about having a central resource like the Saintmaker is that not only do you have these really solid goal plans that prompt you again every quarter to kind of review things, make sure that you're still on track with what's being asked of you and what's getting you going and what's feeling like progress in your vocation. But you're also able to, with the Saintmaker, break it down to, like I said, monthly plans, weekly plans, and then daily plans, right? So, and then all that stuff's with you all the time. So there was a period in my life where I had all this stuff in many different places, and it was hard to coordinate myself and to really focus myself on a daily basis. Another issue is that sometimes all this stuff, if you get too far into like the digital world, you did the work. Say you wrote a series of your goals, you started to create some goal plans, but then because they don't tangibly exist in your life, it's very easy to lose track of them and kind of forget that they mean anything, that they're a part of your life and there's something you're working on. So, the Saintmaker, like I said, gives you a central area, and it also gives you a physical format, so it's easy to kind of keep hold on in a real way. And then finally, like I said, it allows you, especially on a monthly basis, to kind of refocus and just make sure you're staying on track throughout the season. So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that we have a previous workshop, a previous part of this goal setting workshop, which is Saintmaker episode 1, which you can find on YouTube, you can find on Facebook. So go back. Like I said, if you're going to be working through this episode, it would be good to go back and check that one out. The other one is the blog post that I mentioned at the beginning, Why Christians Set and Achieve Goals Differently. That's a great blog post. I'm really happy with it. It's kind of part 1 in a bit of a longer series. I think the next blog post I write is going to be about St. Thomas Aquinas' how St. Thomas Aquinas would set goals. But this first blog post, Why Christians Set and Achieve Goals Differently, which you can find at thesaintmaker.com/blog, is more about a biblical approach to goal setting, which I think will be very interesting because I've never seen any information out there about that. So hopefully that's helpful. I also wanted to mention before getting into let's see. You know what? Actually, let's do some questions and answers. If anybody has any. Basically, we spent this podcast going over our goal planning for the Saintmaker, and Mark has chimed in. So Mark Walco, how's it going? Nathan, people might find Ralph Martin's Fulfillment of All Desire a compendium of the wisdom of the saints on the Catholic tradition of the spiritual life. Yeah, okay, that's great. So Ralph Martin's Fulfillment of All Desire. Yeah, so I like Ralph Martin a lot. He recently did some episodes with Matt Fradd on Pints with Aquinas, and I highly recommend going over and listening to those. Ralph has a really good head on his shoulder. He actually lives, he's actually in my diocese. I've never met him, but he lives around here in southeastern Michigan. So good man, very good insight into, especially I found the current state of the church. He has a very good kind of view on things, a hopeful view. And so I recommend checking Ralph out. And like Mark said, Fulfillment of All Desire. I haven't seen that, but definitely worth a look. I recently, last night, was speaking with some priest friends of mine, and they were telling me about another book that folks would be interested in. It's called The Soul of the Apostolate is one of them, and then there was another one. What was it? You know what? I can't remember right now, but I think what I'll do is I'll just leave. It's very specifically about following Christ through the liturgical year and ordering our lives sort of according to that blueprint. So obviously the Saintmaker, if you've spent any time with the Saintmaker, one of my main goals with the Saintmaker was to, kind of redefine time management from a Christian perspective, where the liturgical year becomes the real litmus test for, whether you're quote unquote managing your time correctly. And I think one of the fruits that we should see, I've talked about this with with quite a few friends and with my spiritual director as well. One of the fruits that we should see is, freeing up some of our time to take off some of the feast days from work. I think that would be one of the first things that if we're really starting to put in that effort to unite ourselves and to conform ourselves to the church's rhythm for our lives, that would be a good goal to start looking at taking off some of the feast days, some of the primary feast days. But also it should become sort of part of the natural fruit of attempting this, right? So, because so much of it is just about organizing our lives according to priorities, right? Instead of distractions or our own personal preferences based on kind of passing things. Like, everything that we're talking about is figuring out what are the top priorities in my life, what am I shooting for, and then how can I practically do that, right? And then through that practical process, there's this ongoing negotiation and interaction with the reality of virtue and vice, right? So what are we choosing on a daily basis? And a priest friend of mine recently said, life isn't hard. So, you're not doing these distracting things, let's say, because life is hard. Life is hard because you're doing these distracting things, right? So we could just as easily say, we're not avoiding planning our time in the morning and setting aside time to set up our day properly with good prayer and good planning because life is hard. Life is hard because we're not doing this virtuous thing, So that's a really good thing, and I think it's something maybe I should just put on a plaque above my door or something. But I would recommend writing that down and keeping it on the wall, because everybody that I've talked to about it has just said, "Oh yeah, I totally needed to hear that." So I don't know. Hopefully that can be helpful to anyone who's listening. And then, like I said, I'll drop a couple resources that could be useful, and we'll also put a link to Mark's recommendation, Ralph Martin's Fulfillment of All Desire, in the show notes. Alrighty, so next week, what are we going to be? So there's another episode coming up next Friday, and we're going to have, God willing, if everything goes according to plan, we're going to have Father Corey Campo, who is a Saintmaker user. We have quite a few priests. I'd like to get some of them on. And Father Corey is the first attempt at that. So I think it's going to be great. I've talked to him quite a few times. He was on some of our early Saintmaker community meetups for Saintmaker customers. And he's going to be talking about how he uses the Saintmaker to organize his own life. And then also he has some very good and important things to say about how faithful Catholics and Christians can be good stewards of their time. So finally, I wanted to mention before we go, one more time, we have our Memorial Day sale right now, 30% off everything. So we have our Saintmaker available for sale, 30% off. We have our Daily Saint available for sale, 30% off. We have our new pocket notebooks, 30% off, and other stuff that I can't think of right now. But it's a good opportunity, and the sale ends at the end of Memorial Day, so it'd be good to jump on it now. You can head over to saintmaker.com to check out the sale, and we hope to not only see more of you the more we do of this podcast thing, but also see you at the Saintmaker community, the Saintmaker private community on Facebook. If you are a Saintmaker customer, find us at the Saintmaker Catholic Life Planner customer community, and go ahead and submit an application for membership. We're going to be pretty strict about who can join because we only want Saintmaker customers. But yeah, find us there, and I look forward to seeing you soon, and God bless. Have a good one.